We should all be aware of this because it's been confirmed that DNA from genetically modified crops can be transferred into humans who eat genetically modified crops. It's not a mystery that most countries around the world have completely banned GMOs. In a new study published in a peer-reviewed public Library of Science Plus, researchers emphasize that there is sufficient evidence that meal-derived DNA fragments carry complete genes that can enter into the human circulation system through an unknown mechanism. I wonder, says the writer, if the scientists at these biotech corporations have already identified this method. In one of the blood samples, the relative concentration of plant DNA is higher than the human DNA. The study was based on the analysis of over 1,000 human samples from 4 independent studies. PLOS is an open access, well-respected peer-reviewed scientific journal that covers primary research from disciplines within science and medicine. It's great to see this study published in it, confirming what many have been suspicious of for years. And when it comes to genetically modified crops and food, we really have no idea of what the long-term effects will be on the public. The very first commercial sale of genetically modified foods was only 20 years ago, and it was actually 30 years ago. There's no possible way that our health authorities can test all possible combinations on a large enough population over a long period of time to be able to say with certainty that they are harmless. Geneticist David Suzuki recently expressed his concerns, saying that human beings are part of a massive genetic experiment, quote unquote, over many years as thousands of people continue to consume GMOs and it makes sense. Advances in genome science over the past few years have revealed that organisms can share their genes. Prior to this, it had been thought that genes were shared only between individual members of a species through reproduction. Geneticists usually follow the inheritance of genes in what they would call a vertical fashion, such as breeding a male and female. You follow their offspring and continue down the road from there. Today, scientists recognize that genes are shared not only among the individual members of a species, but also among members of different species. Our bloodstream is considered to be an environment well separated from the outside world and the digestive tract. According to the standard paradigm, larger macromolecules consumed with food cannot pass directly to the circulatory system. During digestion, proteins and DNA are thought to be degraded into smaller constituents, amino acids and nucleic acids respectively, and then absorbed by a complex active process and distributed to various parts of the body through the circulation system. And here, based on the analysis of over 1,000 human samples from 4 independent studies, we report evidence that meal-derived DNA fragments which are large enough to carry complete genes can avoid degradation and through an unknown mechanism enter the human circulation system. In one of the blood samples that reveal concentration of plant DNA is higher than the human DNA. The plant DNA concentration shows a surprising precise log normal distribution in the plasma samples, while non-plasma cord blood control sample was found to be free of plant DNA. It's not like a human being mates with an apple, banana, or carrot plant and exchanges genes. What biotechnology and biotech corporations like Monsanto have done is they have allowed for the transfer of genes from one to the other without any regard for the biological limitations or constraints. The problem with this is that it's based on very bad science. The conditions and biological rules that apply to vertical gene transfer, at least those that we are aware of, do not necessarily apply to horizontal gene transfer. Biotech science today is based on the assumption that the principles governing the inheritance of genes are the same when we move genes horizontally as they are when they are moved vertically. It just goes to show that GMOs should be subjected to much more experimentation and rigorous research before we continue to consume them. How can our governing health authorities approve these are safe? It's almost as if they told us they were safe and we just believed them without questioning it. We seem to be very gullible, a gullible race of humans, but things are changing and more are starting to question the world around them. One small mutation in a human being can determine so much. The point is, when you move a gene, one tiny gene out of an organism into a different one, you can completely change its context. There is no way to predict how it's going to behave and what the outcome will be. We think that we designed these life forms, but it's like taking the Toronto Orchestra prepared to play Beethoven's symphony, and then you take some random drummers from here and flip them in with the Toronto Symphony, and you say you play music. What comes out is going to be something very different. Publicists say that there is a good intention behind GMOs, but the fact of the matter is it's driven by money, said David Suzuki. And the writer says, I personally believe the intentions go beyond money, but that's another story. It's also pretty clear that DNA from food can also and does end up in animal tissue and the milk products that people eat. There are studies that show when humans or animals digest genetically modified foods, the artificially created genes transfer into and alter the character of the beneficial bacteria in the intestine. And researchers report that microbes found in the small bowel of people with allostomy are capable of acquiring and harboring DNA sequence from GM plants. Genetically modified crops have infiltrated animal feed since 1996, and it's normal for them to have a complete GM diet. Studies have linked GMO animal feed to severe stomach inflammation and enlarged uteri in pigs, for example. It's also important to note that gene transfer among genetically engineered agricultural crops and surrounding native species has given rise to a highly resistant species called superweeds, and according to the World Health Organization, gene transfer and the movement of genes from GM plants into conventional crops or related species may have an effect on food safety and food security. This risk is real, as was shown when traces of maize-type corn, that is, which was only approved for feed use, appeared in maize products from human consumption in the United States. The truth is, genetic engineers have never taken the reality of gene transfer into consideration when they produce these things and introduce them into the environment. As a result, we are now starting to see the consequences of genes that are engineered, particularly how they spread and alter other organisms in various environments. Watrud and colleagues in 2004 found that the herbicide-resistant transgene spread via pollen to an area up to 21 kilometers beyond the control area perimeter and had pollinated wild creeping bent grass. Prior to this year, governments concluded that transfer of DNA from genetically modified crops and foods is unlikely to occur. We now can see that they are wrong, or perhaps they had known of this already. Regardless of the fact that DNA from genetically modified foods can be transferred to humans and animals, very little is still known today, and what is known does not look good. There are studies linking GMOs and pesticides to various ailments. We've presented and written about them on our website numerous times. This is another article to add to the growing amount of evidence to suggest we need to halt the production of GMOs until we conclusively know that they are safe for human consumption. It's not a mystery that most countries around the world have completely banned GMOs. This was originally published on Collective Evolution, and it's on Bennett Reality by Arjun Walia. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.